And there we go. And I'll be opening up the chat. I don't see anything in the chat at all. Hello. Hi, David. Okay, working on data analysis and qual. Okay. We'll get to that in a second portion of this. Doc candidate method. Hey, Janan. Okay, doc candidate. Okay. So it seems like we have students, faculty, at analysis, practitioner research. Okay. Thanks for that, James, Dr. James. Students. Okay. So it seems like we have a mix of both, and Michelle, that's MPH, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. Okay, so yeah, we're going to cover both quant and qual. And it does seem like we have both students and faculty here, which is great. Okay. Luann, Prof. Okay, seems like you're doing qual. Okay. So let's thank you for that. This helps me kind of understand, you know, what we're doing here in terms of who we're talking to. So I'm going to jump into quant first. So before we get into quant, I mean, I think we should talk about why we're doing any why do we care about methodology? Why don't we just go from like the research question to the results? Right? We could just do that. So the reason is that good science, okay, or science is replicable. So you have to share with folks your methodology to how you treat that data, okay? How you collect data, okay, who you're collecting it from, the instruments you're using, the procedure you're using, and the analysis that you're using. I remember having a breakfast with this famous researcher from Texas, and he was doing stuff around, if I can get it in my head now, he was doing stuff around if people wrote about their a traumatic experience versus writing about the contents of your closet, did you visit the health center less? That was the research question, okay? But what he did not include, and he talked about it over breakfast, which was, I told these people this is the most important thing. In other words, he was adding a lot of juice that should have been in the procedure to my brain, okay? So, because you may not be able to replicate those findings, okay? So you have to lay things out exactly how you're doing it, who the participants are, okay? What the instruments are, what the procedure is. Okay, so for replicability purposes and generalizability purposes, you want to be able to have a tight study that someone else can do and say, yes, this is in fact what's happening. Okay, this intervention is actually effective. So the basic portions of a quant and aspects of qual too, but of quant is certainly you have to have clean research questions. You have to have clean research questions stated in statistical language, okay? So we'll talk about what that means a bit, okay? But you have to have clean questions. You can't have vague questions. You can't have constructs that are ill-defined and so forth. So clean questions, understand who your participants are, okay? What region, what age, what ethnicity, what gender, okay? Things of this sort. One quick thing about participants for all you grad students out there, be careful. You don't want any, I'm making a generalization. My hope is to help you graduate, okay? And I'm just saying IRB is going to be very, very particular if you go to vulnerable populations, if you go to elderly, or if you go to young kids, or you go to mentally problematic folks, or if you go to incarcerated folks. So just that research needs to be done, but maybe after you graduate. Okay, so I'm just saying that when it comes to participants, that they will be extra scrutiny going on there, okay? All right. Instruments, typically you have a survey instrument. So, survey instruments. First of all, you want to use reliable, valid instruments that are already established. Just so, if you don't know, let me tell you, it's absolutely 100% great to use existing instruments. You do not have to create your own instruments. I would dissuade you from using your own instruments. Why? Because when you say, well, I'm going to have my own instrument around emotional intelligence, okay? Those reviewers on your committee and that IRB is going to say, how do you know that that's a reliable instrument? How do you know that that's a valid instrument? You don't. And you're going to wind up into another whole game of validating an instrument when in fact you want to use, okay, an emotional intelligence instrument or whatever instrument to do something else, to see if an intervention worked and increased empathy scores or whatever, okay? So use existing instruments, even if you have to adapt the instrument was built for teachers. I'm going to nurses. That's okay. You can swap that out, okay? You can still use the existing, okay, the existing reliability and validity, okay? So, but do not use your own instruments, okay? Unless that's the whole nature of your study. I want to develop a new instrument. Great. Develop the instrument. You're going to need other instruments to have some convergent validity and so forth. So use other instruments. Procedure, just like I mentioned with that breakfast, okay, you want to say exactly what you told those participants, okay? Okay, exactly what you told them. Whether it's a script that you have to read to them, that's fine, okay? But you want your readers to know in your methodology what exactly was said. How was the information presented? How the intervention was presented, and so forth. All that has to be nailed down, okay? So after you have clean research questions, after you have, and Melissa, as I'm going through this, I'm saying, I need better visuals here. I should get a picture of participants, but okay, so I should say, Melissa, Ashley, and Samantha are here to answer your questions as we go through this thing. You can put that into the Q&A or into the chat, okay? All right, so after you have clean questions and after you have, okay, identified your participants and how you recruited those participants, and after you have reliable and valid instruments, okay? After you've clearly defined your procedure, that someone can replicate that exactly, okay? Then we get to the data plan. Data plans are notoriously ill-defined, improperly defined, okay? Assumptions not identified, okay? Data plans are typically a mess, all right? By the way, we help with data plans, but the data plans, you have basically has three parts of this thing, okay? A data analysis plan is, at the high level, what statistical analysis am I going to use to address those research questions given the level of measurement of that data? And we'll talk about level of measurement of data. Okay, that's at a high level. That's what you want to do. What is this? What is the statistical plan? Okay, what is the data analysis plan? The data plans have three components to it. Okay, the data plan has this is the test you're going to use or tests you're going to use, the assumptions of those tests. Okay, all right, and the justification. Why is that test appropriate to answer that question given that level of measurement? And in fact, often the answer to that rationale or that justification is because that research question is in statistical language. Does A predict B? I'm in prediction language, regression language, okay? And I'm using this type of regression because I have scale level variables, okay? All right, data plans. The other piece that absolutely have to be covered is sample size determination. There's two types of samples in the world, okay, roughly speaking. Okay, one type is that I want to generalize to the whole population, okay? So when you go to vote and they show you, they're going to vote for this candidate, okay? And they're 2 points ahead, plus a margin, plus or minus some margin, okay? So there's a sample size, which is, how do you get 3,000 people, okay? This is what they do. Polling data, 3,000 people, they can tell you what the whole country's doing. They're systematically sampling from the country, okay? That's not what we're doing here, okay? We're not doing that. So sample sizes based on the population, we are not doing that. What we're doing is a power analysis, okay? That is to say, what is the sample size needed based on the statistics that I mentioned in the data analysis plan? That's what we're talking about here, okay? And by the way, I used to struggle with this a lot, okay, during my own early days. And now we have a tool in Intellective Statistics, shameless plug, okay? And maybe, Melissa, we can put in the tools into the chat. So if you're struggling with sample size or data plans, they're both sitting in a tool, okay? So, but once you know, okay, what the analysis is, and the tool will help you do that, okay? The sample size is it's 2 clicks away, okay? So you don't have to go to G-Power, you don't have to go to PASS, you don't have to work for an hour when it's like 1 second. And I'll remind myself, or Melissa will remind me, okay, let's just get through the data plan and sample size. Okay, so these core components, I think about like a cookbook, okay? What is a cookbook? Cookbook is you have these ingredients, you mix them in this way, you bake it for that long. That is, you follow that recipe, okay? And you have the same product every single time. That's exactly what you want, okay? You want anyone, to be able to go through, okay, your steps and your methodology and your quant methodology and have the same exact finding or similar findings. That's science. That's replicability. That's good research. Okay. That's advancing our culture. Okay. That's what that is. All right. That's why the methodology is important. Okay. If you have no methodology and you're just using black magic to come up with your results or some damn thing, okay, that's not going to be helpful to anybody. So that's why we need to think about it like a cookbook. You can give it to someone, your next door neighbor who knows nothing, and they can replicate your findings. All right, enough of that. Go on here. Data plans, a huge sticking point, okay? As I say, or said, okay, that the data plan is based on your research questions and a level of measurement of your variables. And we're going to talk about both research language and levels of measurement. Excuse me. Okay. So it's not really difficult. Okay. There's 3 kind of basic common statistical language words, verbiage, or phrases, okay? And those phrases are, let me see if I can get to my annotate, and I think I can do this. Okay, so the first one is that, A relates to B, okay? Relates is one. Differences, okay? There's differences on A by B, okay? Or A, is predicted by B. So related to, differences on, or predicted, those are going to carry you a long, long way, okay? Because the relating business is going to speak to regression language, pardon me, to correlation or chi-square language. Differences, you're in t-test world or ANOVA world, and prediction is in regression world, okay? And those cover, a vast majority of things, okay? Because there's 5 regressions, there's, 8 types of ANOVA t-tests, there's, 8, chi-square, chi-square correlation kind of stuff. So So that language is really helpful, okay? What's critical and what has to be added to it, though, is not only related differences prediction, okay, but what are the level of measurements of A and B? What are we even talking about there? All right. So I'm going to group these things into three types of levels of measurement of the data, okay? And let me just apologize, okay, to the qual people. Hang in there. We'll get there, all right? But for the quant people, by the way, the qual people probably have some descriptive stats, so this might be helpful. Okay. So there's three levels of measurement, generally speaking. There's nominal, which has the Venn diagram kind of icon. Okay. Ordinal, ordered, okay, and continuous, scale, interval, or ratio. Okay. All right. And all of these go in higher levels of specificity. Okay. So nominal level variables, it's Latin for name only. It's just labeling things, okay? Male, female, Republican, Democrat, right, left, okay? East Coast, West Coast, whatever, okay? They're just labels. There's no hierarchy going on, no ordering going on, okay? All right. The next level of measurement is ordinal. It has the kind of order, okay, in the name there. All right. It has both labels, small, medium, large, or small, medium, extra large, and it has an order. Hence, the specificity is increasing. All right. So ordered data. Okay. However, the interval or the size or the volume is not necessarily equal. Okay. So small could be 8 ounces, medium drink could be 12 ounces, extra large could be 32 ounces. Okay. So you do have labels, you do have an order, but they're not equally separated. The third and final level of measurement is continuous. Again, I use this synonymously with ratio level, scale level, interval level, all of these kind of things. The icon is a ruler, it's numbers, it has equal intervals as a ruler does, okay, equal spaces. It has both labels, 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degrees, 4 degrees. It has an order, 2 is after 1, 3 is after 2, okay, so it's ordered and they're equally spaced, okay? So that's the quick primer on levels of measurement. So to go back, you want both the language, okay, and you want the level of measurement of your A's and B's. That is your variables. How are they measured? Okay. All right. Let's get into one step further into the how this language applies. Okay. So A relates to B. If they're both nominal, okay, you're in chi-square land or nominal and ordinal. For example, does gender, male, female, and cola preference, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, are they related to each other? That's a chi-square question, okay? Does male, female, and pre-post differ, okay? Maybe they're ordered there, right? Pre-post, okay? You're still in chi-square land. When you start getting to ordinal, that is the A's and the B's, or scale, you're really in Spearman and Pearson land, okay? Just as a fine point on this, that once you have an ordinal level variable, okay, and you're relating small, medium, extra large with age or something of this sort, which is scale, or some other ordinal variable, you're in Spearman. Once you have an ordinal level variable as an A or a B, you're in Spearman correlation land. Once you get to scale and scale, okay, then you're in Pearson correlation. So the number of, sales go up, ice cream cone sales, as the temperature goes up, okay? It's a very scale, Pearson correlation question. So when you have related things, okay, that is relation in your question, okay, you're either dealing with chi-squares or correlations. Okay. Are there differences on A by B? Okay. Very, very common. All of these are very common, by the way, but these are common. They're common, but people still get stuck with them, surprisingly, because you're not used to it. You don't do this. You read articles, but it's different actually going from reading an article where they're using a t-test to trying to figure out for yourself, how do I articulate that statistical analysis, okay? And by the way, the stakes are high, because if you get the wrong test in there, you're going to give it to your committee, you're going to give it to IRB, they're going to sit on it for 2 weeks, then you're going to have to go back and be at square one. And by the way, for whatever reason, don't ask me why, okay? People will often say, you're not using the right test, and then stop. They don't give you the right test. Give you the faculty, give the students, help them find the right test. If they've tried, but to have them kind of just shoot it out themselves, it's not as helpful as one could be, okay? So differences, very common. Are there differences on emotional intelligence by gender? That is gender, B, nominal, okay, only has 2 levels in my example, male, female, okay? If you're using gender and it has male, female, transgender female, okay? If you have more than 3 levels, then we're looking at ANOVA tests, okay? So the key is that the dependent variable is scale. The nominal independent variable, I want to see differences on emotional intelligence, my example, by some independent variable. If it has 2 levels, we're in t-test land. 3 or more, we're in ANOVA land. Okay. If we have a scale variable by an ordinal independent variable, okay, we're still in t-test land, okay, in ANOVA land, all right? If you have an ordinal variable by a nominal variable, I'm saying differences in the ordinal by some nominal, you're in Mann-Whitney. If the gender in my example, males and females, are different, okay, all right, you're in Mann-Whitney land. If it's the same people pre to post, the differences on, the size of the beverage at pre, I do some taxing exercise intervention, and then I measure it after, the same folks, it's a Wilcoxon. So one is an independent levels of the IV, okay? That is different people here. Here, same people. When you have 3 or more levels of the nominal, okay? So I'm looking at, levels of drink, okay? 8 ounce, 12 ounce, 32 ounce. Okay, by male, female, transgendered, okay? I'm in Crisco Wallace. If it's continuous, pardon me, if it's repeated measures, same people, okay? At some pre-test, post-test, some follow-up, Friedman test. I'll just do one more thing. I'm going to jump to the tool really quick. But so one other thing, prediction, you're in regression land all the way through, as you can see here. The key is the what the outcome variable is, also called the criterion variable or the dependent variable. Okay. If that outcome variable, that is the main thing that you're looking at, run times, how much drinks you're having, what your emotional experience is, emotional intelligence is, okay? If it's a binary outcome, pass, fail, live, die, large, small, okay? It's a binary logistic regression. So binary outcome variable, binary logistic. When you have a nominal variable that has 3 or more levels, okay? All right, so you're in multinomial regression. If the outcome variable or dependent variable is ordinal, you're in ordinal regression. And the majority of the cases, you do have a scale outcome variable, okay? And when you have a scale outcome variable, does not matter, by the way, what the predictors are. They could be anything, okay? You're in linear regression or multiple linear regression. The multiple refers to more than one predictor. So the most common cases after decades of this is you're doing linear regressions, you have a scale variable, or you have a binary dichotomous, okay, I guess that's synonymous, outcome variable, right? So before I get to the well, let me just jump to this real quick and let me just get there. Just to show you how simple this can be. This is the Intellectus Statistics project. Let me just get to here. So just to share that under the decision tree, you don't have to have data for this. Decision tree, I want to, right? Let's just talk about differences, relationships, prediction. I want to predict an outcome. They care what the level is. If it's ordinal, I'm doing ordinal regression. All right, if I have a scale variable, linear regression, and then you can jump right into it. So that's the prediction part. It brings us to regressions. The relationships, okay, and I have all scale variables. Everybody, what are we doing here? Relationship with scale variables. You got it. We're in correlation land, okay? Pearson, if they're all scale, or Spearman, if an assumption is not met, or one of them is ordinal, but assumption is not met. And then the other kind of differences, let me just look for differences between groups. I have one DV. We haven't talked about this. I have one IV. Okay, let's just say I have 2 levels, right? Okay. So everybody, you have one outcome variable, one dependent variable, that's binary. What are we doing? You guessed it, we're doing independent t-tests, okay? Or Mann-Whitney if the assumption is not met. So that's a quick way of grabbing what the test should be, okay? Based on what are those 2 things? Statistical language, A, and level of measurement. Those are the keys to unlocking what test to use, okay? The other part is the assumptions, okay? And when you look at some of these tests under the data analysis plans, you can see, okay, you have a draft of this, all right? So you have a draft that you can download, all right, and edit. You can also, I mean, you know, I would say you can use an AI to help you with these things too, all right? Or double check your work. Use this, use AI, use decision trees that are online, okay? But you want to get to the correct test here, and you want to have the assumptions of that test laid out here, okay? The other piece that I spoke about was really the power analysis. And so when we go to different tests like a t-test, okay, all you do is click on the test, all right, and there's different effect sizes here. How do you know which effect size to use? I would say there's a theoretical and there's a practical answer to that. The theoretical answer is you need to go look at previous research that have looked at whatever this outcome variable and looked at the effect size, okay? Maybe there's a large effect there. Maybe there's a small effect there. And then using that similar effect size when determining your sample size. That's a theoretical aspect. There's also a practical aspect that, guess what? If my other, if previous research had found small effects, there's no way I can get 800 folks. So that's the practicality of it. For doc students, I wouldn't worry about it, or thesis students. For faculty, you gotta worry a little bit. So that's something. I think most people will accept the medium effect, okay? I think that's fair enough. And just to say one other thing about effect size is that why are these numbers kind of counter what it should be? So as it turns out, to find a large effect between groups, for example, okay, you need a small sample size to detect large differences. When you have a small effect, really tiny differences between groups, you need a really large sample to detect that. And that's kind of some of the understanding of this. All right, I think I'm going to stop for questions for a moment. I have one in the Q&A, if I can get to it. Let me see here. I have the chat. I don't know if I have the Q&A that I can get my hands on here. Hang on. Why won't, okay. Okay, Melissa, I really can't get to the Q&A for some reason.
Okay, it should be at the bottom, but I can just enter into the chat the question that's in there.
Is it over here? No. Sorry. It might be because I have this little thing on here. Okay, how do you determine the appropriate sample size? We just talked about that. You determine the sample size by looking at your language in your research question, level of measurement of your variables, determining the test, and then going to the test, and then selecting an effect size based on a theoretical or practical responses. At what point does a student use a t-test? Well, so that is, let me go back here. Let me go back here. You're going to go to that t-test because your research question stated that differences on A by B, or my example, emotional intelligence by gender. My outcome variable, my dependent variable is a scale variable. Emotional intelligence goes from 0 to 100. My independent variable is nominal with 2 levels. I'm only assessing males and females. So that's the answer. So okay. What is this? Who determines this? Okay, well, you do. The researcher does. That's the whole point of this. And what level of control does the researcher have in the selection process? Well, I mean, that's a good question. And the short answer is that the researcher often controls the independent variable. I want to look at it by male, female. I want to look at it by Republican, Democrat, independent. I want to look at by something, okay? By age or whatever, okay? Oftentimes, the researcher does not control the dependent variable. How fast people run in a mile, how much cola they drink, what their scores are on some emotional intelligence. So the dependent variable depends upon the participants or the observations, and the researcher is controlling the independent variable. Okay. So, okay, so I'm just gonna kind of go on here. So let me just move on. Gian, I'm gonna, again, we're gonna talk about interviews, and we're gonna move right into qualitative. Okay. So what are the bones of qualitative methods? Okay, well, you need to have research questions. Typically, the research questions are also going to drive your semi-structured interview questions. So if you want to know about perceptions about schools, and you're going to be interested in the safety of it and the academics of it and the socialization of it and the sports or the arts, okay? So you're going to have those can be part of your research questions, but that's also going to inform your semi-structured interview. So research questions are really critical here. The participants, they obviously they need to have experience in these things. So, so if you're going to be looking at from the student's point of view, from the parent's point of view, from the administrator's point of view, from the teacher's point of view, and so forth. So these participants need to have experience in those areas, okay? All right, the instruments procedure, oftentimes it's semi-structured interviews, okay? So, I'm gonna look at all the different roles within a school that touch the school. I'm gonna interview them, okay? You can interview them by, um, you know, via Zoom. And by the way, you can not only record, but transcribe recordings in Zoom. So, avail yourself to that. Takes a few minutes to get that set up. It took me a few minutes to get that transcript, but then once it's going, then it's all recorded and transcribed. So, those are really good ways of doing it. People do interviews and ask open-ended questions in a survey format, via Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey or something. I never see the quality of responses as when people are answering it as someone sitting across from you. So I would just recommend that you could be short, you could take 10 minutes, you could take 15 minutes, and maybe people would fill out it's easy to send out a survey to folks, but again, that quality is rarely there. Data analysis plan, typically we're talking about, and I think about it in terms of phenomenological is the most experience that I have, which is really what are people's experiences, lived experiences, and talk about how are you going to excerpt, how are you going to combine those excerpts and generate a code name and description. How are you going to combine codes to generate a theme or a theme description? And I'll touch on intellect as qualitative, a tool to kind of help you do that as well. Now to Jian's question about the sample size, I think faculty would tell you that you need to keep collecting data until you have saturation. What does that mean? That means that there's no new information is emerging, okay? That is, the responses are covering things. I've seen interviews, or results with 5 folks, 7 folks, 10 folks, okay? When I see people that are like, wow, I have to do 30 interviews and have to be an hour long, I mean, I can help you, and the tools can help you thematize those things quickly, but just the amount of time to get the data, and then you have to make sure that the transcription is accurate. It just is a heck of a lot of work there. I think I shouldn't say more than, when you're getting individuals' personal responses, okay? I think that you definitely have the obligation. You do have it with quant as well, but so it does apply to both. But should be clear about the consent. You need to have informed consent, okay? You need to have, it's either gonna be confidential or anonymous. It's not gonna be both. Confidential is I know who you are, and I'm going to keep that confidential, or it's anonymous, I never know who you are, okay? You're just one of people that filled out the survey. Okay, so it does seem like in the qualitative world, okay, confidentiality is I know who you are, okay? I'm looking at you, all right? In quant, it's more anonymous. I'm sending out to a list of folks. And I'm not collecting your email or things of that sort to know who you are. When it comes to qualitative, I think you're extra beholden to keep things confidential. That their information, and there's a lot of sensitive. I'm just speaking with a gentleman, faculty member, looking at transgender in China. Do you think that information needs to be confidential? You bet it does. Okay, so and he was, make sure you delete this, and so he's appropriately, even though it was de-identified, okay, all right, it's people's lives, it's people's personal data, and you want to secure it, make sure that's under lock and key in some way or encrypted. It's just there's too much, particularly around sensitive topics, and around different political environments. So political and important or controversial, okay? You're beholden as a researcher, faculty probably, to protect that, okay? Okay, practical considerations. So oftentimes when people use qualitative tool, I'll show you, they kind of just throw in, if you have 10 interviews, they throw in 10 separate interviews. But it doesn't have to be that way, just to know that you can put it in by survey or by interview question. Maybe you have 3 research questions, and the first 3 interview questions deal with RQ1. The next 3 interview questions deal with research question RQ2, and then the third set, interview questions, 7 to 9, okay, deal with the third research question. So, and you might want to have 3 separate projects there. So just to know how you put data in makes a difference, particularly when we're dealing with AI stuff that I'll show you. And I think I just talked about this. Also, if there's other kinds of folks. So when sometimes the research question will ask, hey, you know what is your, perceptions about, arts in school, okay? That could be fine. Or you can say, what are the differences in the perceptions of arts by different roles, be it a parent or be it a teacher and so forth. So I would want different projects for that. So just know that the way you put data in makes a difference. It should make a difference. Obviously prioritize the quality over the quantity of it. People want to go on and on with tons of interviewees. Okay. The quality of those themes, that's the golden key. Okay, that's what you want. I also I'm very cautious about overwhelming readers. Maybe faculty can weigh in on this, but I don't. I want something that readers can keep in their brain. I don't want 50 themes, okay? Unless they're bucketed in some fashion, but you want a handful that you can grab in your brain. Let me just share that with it for a second. So, right here. So just to know that this is called intellect is qualitative, and it does things like takes interviews, okay? And then really what it does is with inductive coding, and then, by the way, dirt cheap. You know, Melissa could put the link in to purchase the Quant to the Qual tool. Very simple to use. What it's doing now is going through those 4 excerpts there, pardon me, those 4 interviews, identifying important excerpts, and then generating 24 codes, and it excerpted 56 passages in that very short time, okay? So you can see, okay, some of the excerpts here, okay? And then the code associated with that. It should be that one right there. All right. It also has the ability to not only make codes, but also figure out how do those codes collapse, okay, into 12 themes. And it would be beholden upon the researcher, you, to go into each of those themes and look at that theme name and theme description, make sure all those excerpts make sense. It also not only, just to show you visually, here are all of the themes that emerged in 2 seconds. Here's the representation across interviewees, okay, and the number of excerpts. It also has the ability to not only excerpt, encode, and thematize, and visualize, okay, as I just did, but you can also tie your research questions to particular themes, okay? So the AI found that those 5 themes really help address that research question. And the tool will then go on to not only state the research question, state the theme that goes with it, but then provide a rationale for why that theme should go with that research question. So Melissa will put that into the, she's got that in there for the Quant and the Qual tool. The Quant tool, again, can really help you with methodology pieces, what test, assumptions of test, sample size of test, and the qualitative. By the way, I should just finish that thought. And then of course, once you get the data, you can, okay, conduct analyses very, very quickly or get support up here. Ditto with the qualitative, you can go ahead and upload transcripts. Really, I probably need a little qualitative methodology template sitting here. And that's something. And then, of course, you can get consulting. By the way, these tools on Tuesday, Melissa, maybe you can put in the Tuesday to use the tools. There's a free Tuesday webinar at 1 o'clock.
Yep, we send that with the recording links to all of our other webinars.
Got it, included in Tuesdays.
Yeah, I can include that too.
Okay, cool. All right, terrific. All right, so let me stop for questions. Can you explain what you mean by codes? Sure. So I'll just take this code here, okay, adaptability. So what the tool did was it looked for important excerpts that are similar. And then it said, okay, what should we name that? What is the essence? What is the construct that we're really trying to get at? Adaptability. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means the importance of remaining flexible, learning from mistakes, and pivoting when necessary to sustain growth. So it's naming and describing the essence of those excerpts. We call that a code. We call a theme the naming and describing of several codes. Okay, so that's what I mean by that. And I'm gonna flip this. So because we're kind of in the, keep the questions coming, okay? Let me just put this out here, that there's a QR code for a consult. There is Samantha's here for student support, Ashley is here for faculty support, training, demos, trials. Melissa's here for everything else. Institutional questions and things of that sort. Okay, and then here's some websites, phone numbers. Are there other questions that we have at the moment?
And
Is
feel
there a
free,
maximum number? Is there a maximum number of transcripts that could be uploaded? We haven't reached that maximum, so I'm gonna say no. I would say that it can when I'm gonna get off the screen in a second here. Um, I'll just say it can take all different languages. So I uploaded traditional Mandarin, traditional Chinese, and I deleted it as I said earlier. But so it does take different languages, then the codes and the themes come out in English, but the excerpts would stay in that native language. So when I did the Chinese coding and thematizing, the excerpts were in Chinese or Mandarin. Okay. All right. Other questions? Let me see here. Do I have other questions? Chat.
we don't at the moment, but if you have a question you'd like to ask live, feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you. Or you can enter them in the chat or the Q&A.
And
And then,
while,
go ahead.
please go ahead, my apologies.
Oh, here, I'm gonna unmute. 1 second. Okay. Janan, you
Hi,
can go ahead.
Dinan.
Hello, hi.
How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Thank
Good.
you. Working on the transcripts,
Okay,
and I'd like to thank you for the services.
sure.
Uh, yeah. I want to ask because I'm working on the interviews. So what I'm doing is for each interview, I'm assigning, for example, I'm saying participant one. So
Mm.
later on, when you're going to generate the information, like the slide that you're sharing, will it show me, for example, participant one is the one who said this, participant two, participant four, or is
Yeah.
it gonna be random?
No, it shows you. So here, this is actually challenges and growth. These are different, these are different participants here. So this is not a great example, but I'll show you. So, well, it's just one interview. That's not a great example either. I don't want to use somebody's thing there. Let's try this. Okay, so two different interviews, okay? So the short answer is yes. It's going to give you different folks. It will identify the different folks here. So if you upload them separately, the excerpts will be by interviewee. All right.
Okay, and we have a couple more questions coming in. And if you can't see the Q&A, I'm just gonna read them to you.
If I don't, I
That's
can,
okay.
yeah, I can't get to it, sorry.
That's okay. So one of them is how do we state the support by AI?
So I wouldn't say the support by AI, I would just say by the tool. AI is whoever likes it, whoever doesn't, AI is here to stay. Um, so I would cite it by the tool, okay? And at the end of the day, you are the author, you are the authority, and you are the one that is vetting these particular names or editing these things. By the way, there are tools at schools to pick up AI. Okay, so that language needs to be edited, I'll say. Okay, obviously the excerpts are verbatim. So, so you can cite the tool, and in fact, when you get to the And you'll have the citation here. Okay. All right, so that's how you cite it. We'll be sending you slides. We'll be sending you recordings.
We have another question. Is there a minimum text amount to utilize this tool? I have a short answer portion on the tool I'm using. The top of the tool uses Likert scale and the bottom has an area for caregivers to share their thoughts. So maybe show the quant.
You know, I mean, let's just be realistic here. I mean, if you have a short thing and you have if you only have a few participants, okay, but I'll share it for other folks, but you know, don't make your life more complicated, okay? If it's sitting in Excel and you're looking to average an item, average the item, okay? Don't go through the steps, but if you have lots of data, okay, you have different data here and you want to average them, you know, it's very simple. I already did this, which is go to the analysis, go to descriptives. Okay, go to descriptives. You can put in your variables of interest. Hit calculate. So descriptives, put in your variables, hit calculate. I will say that, and then your, you know, you have your descriptives here. I will say that under all of these things is a little video tutorial, 2-3 minute video about how to conduct things. And what else? There's also videos sitting here under the question mark. Under videos. And there's a whole library of 80 videos divvied up by different types of, if you're uploading data or if you're conducting a t-test or whatever. Again, no maximum number of transcripts that get uploaded. Okay, so good point here. So under the quantitative, let me see here. So let me just upload a project real quick. Upload data, Excel, choose file, Rosenberg. So I just want to show the classification tool in the quant. So oftentimes there's, you know, quantitative data, and then they'll have like an open-ended question. This was about transformational leadership. You can we have a text classification tool that once you select that variable, we can automatically bucket or segment those responses very simply. And you can see that there are bucketed into those open-ended responses, bucketed into, you know, EI skills, servant leadership, strategic skills, transformational leadership skills, and so forth. So that's under data management, under text classification. Other questions? And if you have additional questions, you can go, you know, again, if you're a student or faculty, you can feel free to reach out to Samantha or Ashley, and they can triage your question or, you know, get you on a phone call with me or a Zoom call with me. All right.
And we'll make sure that contact information is in the follow-up email with the recording as well.
Terrific. All right. Well, thank you, Leonardo. Thank you all so much. I wish you a great rest of the weekend or weekend and then weekend. And I look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. And my request for you all to please share these with other folks. Part of it is a word of mouth and saying, hey, if you're doing quant or qual or methods, this could be, if it could help you an inch, happy to do that. So with that being said, thank you all for your attention, and we'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye now.